devoutly. Then why do you not worship me? Because I am real, and you are only imaginary. But the leaves of the forest rustle with the laughter of the wind. Said wind and wood, they neither of them know anything. End of chapter 0 through 50. The Book of Lies by Aleister Crowley, chapters 51 through 91. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 51. Terrier Work. Doubt. Doubt thyself. Doubt even if thou doubtest thyself.
Accomplish this mission. One of the most important elements in this package will be extending the 2017 Trump tax cuts. And we've all been talking about this a lot. You've all been writing about it, but some of the recent reports show there was a study that came out about 2 weeks ago that said that we risk losing 6 million jobs and $1.1 trillion in GDP if we don't extend those tax cuts. We have no margin for error. We must get this job done. And by the way, had Democrats won the House, that's what would be happening. They would have given Americans the largest tax increase ever. We're not going to do that. Thankfully for American families, Republicans are leading the House and the Senate, and President Trump is back in the White House, and Vice President J.D. Vance is in the White House, and they are working together. We're all working together. We're going to deliver on these promises through their reconciliation package. We've been using our time together in Miami to work through a few pieces of this process, and we will get this job done. And some of the elements, the key elements of that will be coming together this morning. We apologize for our disparate outfits here. We're all playing different roles and responsibilities on the last day here. And I wish I didn't have a tie in Miami. I think it's some sort of crime here. With that, I'll take your questions. Turner. Well, we'll be getting to that final number. What we've emphasized with our group is that we want to have some flexibility in how the instructions are given to the committees. I mean, this is a complicated process for reconciliation, but if you put the ultimate objective in the reconciliation instructions themselves, then in some ways it can be self-defeating, because if you don't quite hit that number, that goal, then that piece of the reconciliation process can fall out. That title can fall out of the legislation. So we want to be careful in setting that. We want to come out with a number that shows the serious nature of what we're facing, and the high level of cuts that are necessary to get fiscal sanity and responsibility restored to the federal government, but not put everything in there. So in other words, my recommendation and my hope, my admonition to my colleagues here, is that we set a number that's really a floor in what we hope to achieve by savings, and not the ceiling. And there's a lot of strategic reasons for that. But so stay tuned for the number. It will be substantial, because it has to be. I mean, we have a $36 trillion federal debt, and we're committing that in this process, anything we do is going to be deficit neutral at least, and hopefully deficit reducing, because we think we've got to change that trajectory. So that is part of the healthy discussion we've been having, and everyone has lots of opinions about that, of course, and opinions are welcome, and we'll come to consensus on. Well, no, this is exactly what we've been engaging in for many weeks. In fact, some of the members are so exhausted with going through the list menu of cuts and options that they said they're now tired of talking about it, which is exactly where I wanted them to be. Now we got to move to the action step. So what we've been doing is we empowered the committee chairs, as you know, to come up with lists of areas, suggestions in their areas of jurisdiction where some of these cuts could be done, meaningful cuts to really reduce the size and scope of government and get government to be more efficient and effective for the people. So these are lots of handouts and sheets and big screens we've been going through for many weeks now, and we're finalizing all of that now. So stay tuned. I mean, we're not going to publish the list at this point, but that's part of this process to make sure everybody's on the same page about all of it. So, Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, on the President's buyout plan, first of all, your response or thoughts on that. Furthermore, do you think the American taxpayer is comfortable with roughly 2 million federal employees, up to 2 million, sitting at home doing nothing for 8 months, while on a payment?
Yeah, right. Of course, they're not comfortable with it. Drastic times call for drastic measures, and they've been doing this for 4 years under the Biden administration. They had full license, apparently, to not come to work. And it's terrible frustration for us and for the American people. And because of civil service laws is what people have to understand, this is not like a private company. It should be that way, but it's not. The new president can't come in and just walk into an agency and say, you're all fired, which that'd probably be appropriate in some of these places, but he's not allowed to do that under the law. And so the president is thinking outside the box. His team is thinking outside the box. Well, how can we address this problem if we can't fire people for lack of showing up for work? Well, let's give them the option to take a parachute. We don't like that, but it's better than the alternative of having people not work and stay on the payroll. So they estimate that maybe 5 to 10% of the federal workforce will take their golden parachute. They'll be paid through September, I think, is the proposal, and maybe they leave the workforce. Fantastic. I hope they do. But if the estimate is if 5 to 10% leave, you could save $100 billion for taxpayers just with that downsizing of the size and scope of government. There will be other creative ideas on how to do this, but I think it's the right move. Is it frustrating? Yes. Should it not be that way? Yeah. I wish we didn't have civil service laws that require that kind of action, that they need to be reformed. But the president's looking at the reality and the law, and he's trying to do everything within his power to make good on the promises and the demands of the American people. And it's right. I think it's right. Yeah, the objective is by the time we leave here today, is to have a blueprint that will inform the budget committee for when they work on that budget resolution, and they're going to begin that process, the committee work and the markup when we return to Capitol Hill. So they'll have sort of the parameters for that, and what we've emphasized to our colleagues here is, remember, the resolution is just the first step in a long process. It unlocks the reconciliation procedures and processes itself. And so the real battle is not in the budget resolution, it's in the final package. So everybody here still maintains their voting card, and they have the right to stop this process at some point down the road if we're not achieving the level of savings that they desire or committed to. But we have to begin it, and we have to start it, and this is the necessary step. So. Well, listen, we have made very clear, the president's made very clear, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, we're not talking about in any way reducing benefits. What we're talking about is efficiencies in the programs to make them work better for the people who receive those benefits and to make them longer lasting, to sustain the programs. And so those are the ideas that are being talked about: efficiencies, cutting fraud, waste, and abuse. I mean, some of these programs are terribly abused, and it's infamous, and everyone knows it. Now's our opportunity to go in and fix all that, and we are excited about that opportunity. The members are anxious to get it started, and the administration is as well. But benefits will not be affected. So that's the delicate balance that we're working through. But there's a lot of good work to be done, and we're excited to do it. Look, we want to thank y'all again for being here, and hope you've had at least a little sunshine. warmer weather. We've had a great retreat. It's going to wrap up well today, and we will see you back on the Hill as we begin all this good work. So thanks so much.
All right, there you have it. The House Republicans, including House Speaker Mike Johnson, answering some questions from members of the media over there in Doral, Florida. Do want to head to a quick 2-minute commercial break, the first one of the hour at 9:11 on the East Coast and 6:11 on the West Coast. We'll be right back here as we head over to the Senate Judiciary Committee as they are now discussing Pam Bondi, Trump's pick for Attorney General, as they decide whether to advance her to the full Senate for a vote on confirmation. That's coming up in 2 short minutes. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 9:13 on the East Coast and 6:13 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and I'm here to bring you all of your top stories and live events from across the country and the world. Do want to head right now over to the Senate Judiciary Committee as we are hearing from Senator Grassley. He is a Republican from Iowa. All of this as they vote on whether to advance the nomination of Pam Bondi as Attorney General.
Against Miss Bondi on this point of a partisan double standard. Some of my colleagues also implied that Miss Bondi's lobbying career should be disqualifying. This too was very unfair. Miss Bondi disclosed her lobbying work and her clients to this committee beyond what she was even required to do. She's been more transparent than other recent nominees, and there is no reason to think that she would not follow the law and recuse herself when conflicts of interest are shown. Democrats did voice concern when one of President Biden's DOJ's nominees worked for China and Huawei during his time in private practice, nor did we hear concerns about former Attorney General Holder's lobbying activities. Now, when Senator Tillis pressed Democrat witness Miss Jennifer Gilbert to articulate specific concerns with Miss Bondi's lobbying career, she was unable to point to anything specific. She just kept repeating that Miss Bondi's former clients would give, quote unquote, the appearance of impropriety. Vague assertions of potential conflicts of interest are not a reason to oppose a nominee who pledged to follow established procedures regarding these conflicts. Some of my colleagues also suggest that Ms. Bondi's loyalty to President Trump is somehow disqualifying. It is not persuasive in any way. There's nothing wrong with President Trump appointing someone who has fiercely defended him to a high position. Ms. Bondi, public is.
Guess who just got a raise? Spoiler alert. It's me, thanks to Free Tax USA. With free federal filing and super low state fees, it's like getting a bonus for doing your taxes. A wise choice today will bring rewards tomorrow. Huh. Must have heard about Free Tax USA. And because I filed early, my tax refund just became my travel fund. More money in my pocket means more stamps in my passport. Free Tax USA, the bonus you didn't see coming. Visit freetaxusa.com today, where your maximum tax refund is guaranteed.
The last 4 years, and a few examples would be Vanita Gupta, who on opening night of the Republican National Convention in 2020 tweeted, quote, "Don't know if I can take 3 more nights of racism, xenophobia, and outrageous lies," end of quote. Matt Olson, Assistant Attorney General for National Security Divisions, was penned an op-ed to Time Magazine in 2016 entitled, quote, "Why ISIS Supports Donald Trump," end of quote. Judge Dale Ho, who suggested that his work was motivated by, quote, "hate for conservatives," end quote, and who described himself as a, quote, "wild-eyed sort of leftist," end of quote. These openly partisan statements didn't bother my colleagues, so if they're fair, they shouldn't be bothered by Ms. Bondi's support of President Trump. Finally, I want to address a smear from the legacy media who claimed that I was repeating a, quote, "discredited myth," end of quote, when I said that the, quote, "FBI opened dozens of investigations into parents who voiced concern at school board meetings regarding curriculum choices and COVID-19 mandates," end of quote. To set the record straight, these are the facts. On October 4th, 2021, General Garland issued a memorandum directing law enforcement to address threats against school administrators and board members. This was in response to a letter requested by the National School Boards Association to President Biden that they later apologized for. That organization said, quote, "there was no justification for some of the language included in the letter." But that apology was too little, too late. By October 20th, 21, FBI Counterterrorism Division had acted on General Garland's directive and announced a new threat tag to use against parents voicing concerns. That threat tag was, quote, "EDU officials," end of quote, as in education officials. FBI whistleblowers came forward stating that, quote, "at least a dozen of our investigations into parents," end of quote, and had been started using the new threat tag. As of October 27th, 2021, Senate Judiciary oversight hearing, I directly asked Attorney General Garland to retract his memo. You know, he refused. On February 3rd, 2023, House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan subpoenaed FBI Director Wray for documents related to the misuse, what quote unquote, the misuse of federal and counterterrorism resources to target parents. In response to the subpoena, the FBI acknowledged for the first time that it opened 25 quote guardian assessments end quote, including 6 that were run by the FBI Counterterrorism Division. These government funded and resourced investigations didn't identify any legitimate threats. I'll now turn to Ranking Member Durbin.
Thanks, Chairman Grassley. If you want to know the role of the Department of Justice under President Trump, just listen to his words. He said, "I have the absolute right to do what I want to do with the Justice Department." End of quote. He not only uses the Justice Department to advance his political interest, but he's also promised to seek, quote, retribution against, quote, the enemy within. The president has repeatedly threatened to weaponize the justice system against those he feels have wronged him, and that's a long list. It includes career prosecutors, military officials, and his own former political appointees. Unfortunately, we are seeing these threats emerge in real time. Last week, the Trump administration reassigned and removed at least 20 senior career National Security Division and Criminal Division attorneys, including one prosecutor who had served in the National Security Division since its inception under George W. Bush. President Trump also forced out both FBI Director Christopher Wray and Deputy Director Paul Abate, creating a leadership vacuum in that important agency. These moves, clearly made in the interest of installing his own loyalists, put our national security and public safety at risk. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia is further proof of President Trump's commitment to putting his interest ahead of those of the American people. Last week, he installed Ed Martin as interim U.S. Attorney here in Washington, D.C. Mr. Martin was the leader of the so-called Stop the Steal movement to overturn the 2020 election, and Mr. Martin defended several January 6 rioters. Mr. Martin was on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol on January 6. He posted the following on social media, and I quote, "Like Mardi Gras in D.C. today, love, faith, and joy. Ignore fake news." End of quote. Mr. Martin has already dismissed all pending charges against January 6 defendants, shut down the section of the office that was handling those cases. He's opened an investigation into the office's January 6 prosecutions, apparently to begin carrying out Pam Bondi's promise to, quote, prosecute the prosecutors, investigate the investigators. In a related development yesterday, Acting Attorney General James McHenry moved to fire a number of career Justice Department employees because, quote, you played a significant role in prosecuting President Trump, end of quote. Retaliating against these career public officials who were simply doing the job they were assigned is patently unfair. Asked repeatedly who will execute the mass deportation effort, we have finally come to learn which agencies will bear that responsibility. They include the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and other Justice Department law enforcement agencies. Now, instead of investigating fentanyl and the firearms trafficking to Mexico to the cartels, DEA and ATF resources will be diverted toward deporting families who may or may not have any criminal record or be any danger to this country. And in the latest blow, President Trump's illegal funding freeze jeopardizes critical Justice Department grants that support local law enforcement and survivors of domestic violence, sex trafficking, and other violent crimes. Given the massive upheaval that President Trump has caused at the Justice Department in just the first few days in office, the next Attorney General will have their work cut out for them. As I said during Ms. Bondi's hearing, it is absolutely critical that any nominee for the position be committed first and foremost to the Constitution and the American people, not the President and his political agenda. Unfortunately, I'm unconvinced that Ms. Bondi shares my belief. She is one of 4 personal lawyers of President Trump that is already already selected for top positions at the Department of Justice. And she has echoed President Trump's calls for exacting revenge on political opponents. Ms. Bondi undermined our democracy by joining President Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. It appears she does not regret that decision, as she refused before this committee repeatedly during her hearing to acknowledge that President Trump actually lost the vote in 2020. During her hearing, I asked if she was familiar with the January 2021 phone call in which President Trump called on the Republican Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, quote, to find 11,780 votes. Ms. Bondi denied ever having listened to the phone call. However, in August of 2023, she appeared on a news program and defended President Trump's conduct with Raffensperger. She stated that his actions were, quote, not a crime and were instead, quote, free speech. She condemned the criminal charges that had been filed against President Trump due to his conduct on that call where he asked the Georgia Secretary of State, quote, to find 11,780 votes. I asked Ms. Bondi to explain why she spoke so authoritatively on the legal strength of the case when she was, according to her own claim before this committee, unfamiliar with the evidence. Her explanation that she was on television, not in a court, is deeply concerning that someone seeking the role of Attorney General believes it's appropriate to comment publicly on a criminal case without conducting even a minimal assessment of the evidence. The role of Attorney General is a serious one. It requires a person be committed to facts and the law, not someone who is willing to say whatever is politically expedient. During Ms. Bondi's hearing, I was surprised to hear her speak of a, quote, peaceful transition of power in 2021. In written questions, Ms. Bondi attempted to walk that statement back, instead referring to, quote, a smooth transition of power. I was in the Capitol building on January 6, 2021. The events of that day were neither peaceful nor smooth. You don't have to take my word for it. The 140 law enforcement officers who were assaulted by President Trump's supporters on January 6 can attest to what actually happened. Ms. Bondi also refused to comment on possible pardons for January 6 rioters who violently assaulted police officers. One of my Republican friends on this panel dismissed my question on the subject and said it was, quote, an absurd and unfair hypothetical to even ask whether President Trump was going to grant pardons to those who assaulted police officers. Now we know what happened. I also remain concerned about Ms. Bondi's deep ties to special interest. Her lobbying clients included an array of large corporations, Amazon, Uber, and a private prison company, Geo Group, along with the government of Qatar. Ms. Bondi has earned over $1 million as a lobbyist and hundreds of thousands more for providing legal services to major corporations. But Ms. Bondi notably did not recognize these entities as potential conflicts of interest as she's confirmed. That's why I asked the Justice Department and the National Archives for more information on her lobbying before the Trump White House and her foreign lobbying activities. We have yet to receive that information. And when asked to commit to recusing herself from matters involving her former clients, Ms. Bondi would only commit to consulting with DOJ ethics officials. The next Attorney General needs to enforce our antitrust laws and protect American consumers, not favor corporate giants. I went into Ms. Bondi's hearing with an open mind for obvious reasons. Yes, she was the Attorney General for the third largest state in the Union for 10 years. But there remains one question basically unanswered: whether she'd be willing to tell Donald Trump, President of the United States, and wealthy special interests know if faced with pressure to use her position as Attorney General to benefit those parties. In light of the Trump administration's actions over the course of the past few days, that question is even more critical, and I did not receive a satisfactory answer from Ms. Bondi. Since Watergate, there's been a bipartisan support for the idea that the Justice Department must be independent from the White House. President Trump's conduct during his first term underscored that need. I do not believe that Ms. Bondi will provide it. I hope she proves me wrong, but I cannot support her nomination. I yield to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Durbin. Today I plan to stay as long as it takes for every member to speak, just as long as they want to. I want to follow the precedent of Chairman Durbin when he handled the Garland nomination. Since we have a quorum present, we can go ahead and call the roll on Ms. Bondi's nomination right away and then turn to statements by members. This is how we conducted the markup for Attorney General Garland under Chair Durbin, and I'd like to follow the same practice. On favorably reporting the nomination of Pamela Jo Bondi to be Attorney General, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Cornyn.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Cruz.
Aye.
Mr. Hawley.
Aye.
Mr. Tillis.
Aye.
Mr. Kennedy.
Aye.
Mrs. Blackburn. Aye. Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mrs. Britt. Aye. Mrs. Moody. Aye. Mr. Durbin.
No.
Mr. Whitehouse.
No.
Mrs. Klobuchar.
No by proxy.
Mr. Coons.
No.
Mr. Blumenthal.
No.
Ms. Verona. No. Mr. Booker.
No by proxy.
Mr. Padilla.
No.
Mr. Welch. Mr. Schiff.
No.
Chairman Durbin. Chairman Grassley.
Aye.
On this vote, the ayes are 12 and these are 10.
Okay. The 12 to 10. Yeah. The nomination will be favorably reported. Now we'll call on Senator Cornyn. You want to speak?
No, thank you.
Okay. Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you very much. Attorney General Bondi was clearly an engaging witness. She was also clearly the twice elected Attorney General of her home state. And she said a lot of the right things. But the question for me that she faced was, if Trump asked her to do something illegal or unconstitutional, would she be capable to say no? That was the key question for me. And what I noticed as she testified here is that whenever she got into an area where there was a Trump sensitivity, it was like watching a plane fly into the Bermuda Triangle and all the navs and comms go suddenly haywire. During her hearing, she refused to acknowledge that President Trump lost the 2020 election. And we've just heard in the Budget Committee, the OMB director claimed that it was rigged. So this is a recurring theme in Trump land. She claimed there was a peaceful transfer of power in 2021, part of the effort to erase January 6th. She refused to agree that there is presently no predication to investigate Special Counsel Jack Smith or Chair Liz Cheney. She defended Kash Patel, claiming, "I don't believe he has an enemies list," except that Patel had posted the list to social media with the caption, and I'm quoting his caption here, "Names named, roadmap unveiled, the manhunt starts tomorrow." If that's not an enemies list, I do not know what is. Will she be a restraint on this character if he becomes the FBI director? This guy also posted a video on social media showing him taking a chainsaw to members of his enemies list. Reposted by Kash Patel. We already see DOJ's independence under attack. People are being cleared out for doing assigned work that their senior members had told them they had to do. Career section chiefs at ENRD, the people with the skills to push back against polluters, have been reassigned or suspended to make it easier for polluters to violate environmental laws. It is getting to be a strange and dangerous time. Just one example was the Trump pardons of the violent offenders January 6th, which we were told would be hard to believe, even absurd, wouldn't happen. We were told that Republican senators were against it for people who assaulted cops, threw stuff at cops, broke down doors, broke windows. We were told if you committed violence, obviously, you shouldn't be pardoned. That by the now vice president. We were told that he's going to focus on all the people who didn't commit any violence. And we were told that when you pardon people who attack police officers, you're sending the wrong signal. But despite all of that, that is precisely what he did. He now has an army on the streets of people who have proven themselves willing to commit political violence at his behest, while also pulling back security protection for his perceived enemies. How violent are the people he pardoned? Well, it hasn't been long since the pardon and one's already been arrested. Another has been killed in a shootout in an armed confrontation with police officers. One already incarcerated for an armed standoff with police was pardoned while in prison. This is not normal. It's just one example of the way things are going. And somewhere, somehow, someone has to have the spine to say no. And I have regrettably concluded, based on watching that airplane spin into the Trump Bermuda Triangle, that Pam Bondi will not be that person, so that is why I voted no.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. As I've said in a number of confirmation hearings, when I consider whether to vote for President Trump's cabinet and executive branch nominees, I look at three things. Do they have the relevant qualifications and experience? Do they have policy views that I think are not obviously in contravention of the basic interests of the people of the United States? And do they have the character and independence to do the job with integrity? Attorney General Bondi clearly has the experience to serve as U.S. Attorney General. She served for 2 terms as Attorney General of one of our largest states, was a prosecutor for decades, and I understand that we will disagree on large areas of policy given that she's been nominated by a president of the other party. We could spend a lot of time on this, but I'm going to focus on a simple question that I think decides my vote here. It came down to the third piece, whether or not Ms. Bondi possesses the character to run the DOJ independent of orders from President Trump and the White House that would put at risk our system of ordered liberty in our Constitution. I wanted to know from her specifically, would she refuse to obey an illegal order or resign if pressed? I asked her that in our private meeting and told her I would ask it again in her public hearing and tried to work through with her what her views were and what her answer was. She refused to answer the question in private and in public, saying that she would not have accepted the nomination if she thought President Trump would ever put her in that position. Some of you may remember I asked that in her confirmation hearing, and she said she wouldn't answer a hypothetical, especially one saying that President Trump would issue an unethical or illegal order. I believe Senator Blumenthal asked the same question, Senator Hirono asked the same question without response. I gave her yet another chance to answer the question directly, having described it as the key to getting my vote for her confirmation when we met privately, in writing, and she refused to answer. How hard is it to say that you would refuse an illegal order? In 2019, in his confirmation hearing, I asked President Trump's last Attorney General, Bill Barr, whether he would resign if asked to do something illegal. And his response was brisk and direct: I would resign. Actions taken yesterday, I believe, show that Ms. Bondi's answer misses a painfully obvious point that this is not hypothetical. The OMB issued an illegal and unconstitutional order freezing hundreds of billions of dollars of duly appropriated and authorized federal grants, funding that Congress had lawfully appropriated. I get it, President Trump was elected and will have the opportunity to put his stamp on the policy priorities of our appropriations going forward. But this is reaching back, grabbing, and freezing appropriations that had already been passed by Congress and signed by a president. That includes funding for my home state and all of yours that the Department of Justice, state and local law enforcement rely on to do their job. Cops hiring grants. This is literally defunding the police if carried out. Drug task forces. No more funding to fight opioid abuse. School violence prevention programs. No more money to keep kids safe in schools. Delaware and all of our state and local fire and first responder and police organizations rely on federal grants to do their work. And if they are frozen or paused for an indefinite period, it has impacts that I think go well beyond the guardrails of what is permissible. This directive was so clearly outside the boundaries of presidential power that a federal judge blocked it within minutes after its application and just hours after a lawsuit seeking a TRO was filed. Let me conclude. Based on her answers, I do not have confidence that Ms. Bondi, in a similar circumstance as this week, would have told the White House or President Trump that that directive was not just ill-conceived, but illegal. Even if she knew it was unconstitutional, I don't believe she would have resigned. And I cannot vote for an Attorney General that I can't trust to stand up for the rule of law. I suspect Ms. Bondi will be confirmed, and I hope that she leads the department with the integrity and independence our system requires. We had a constructive conversation about her record, referenced by the chairman, in working on the opioid crisis and working on criminal justice reform. I have a number of bipartisan bills to address issues like supervised release, helping people leaving prison get driver's licenses, simple common sense progress on criminal justice reform. During our meeting, she said if confirmed, she'd have an open door policy and work across the aisle. I hope that too is true, and I look forward to taking her up on that offer if she is confirmed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was noted by...
All right, so you are listening right there as the Senate Judiciary Committee is discussing the nomination for Attorney General of Pam Bondi. You'll see there on the left-hand side of your screen some facts about her if you're not too familiar with her. Also, you're going to notice on the bottom right-hand side of your screen that we are waiting on the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. confirmation hearing to get underway in just about 15 minutes. Do have to sneak in a quick 2-minute commercial break, but on the other side, we'll head right back to the Judiciary Committee as they discuss that nomination and whether to vote to advance her nomination. here on Live Now from Fox 947 on the East Coast and 647 on the West Coast. Do remind you here that the room is being set up as we are going to have RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. That will get underway in just about 13 minutes, and you can watch it live, raw, and uninterrupted here on Live Now from Fox. In the meantime, do want to head right back out live as the Senate Judiciary Committee is hearing about the nomination of Pam Bondi for Attorney General and whether or not to advance it.
Against corporations, even those in her own leadership, to do what is right under the rule of law and to protect Americans. She is tenacious when she is seeking to bring justice to victims. She's personally led the charge and really led a movement across this nation to eliminate the enormous backlog of untested rape kits in Florida. And through those efforts, cold cases were solved, sexual predators were locked up, and I got to announce in my first year in office that we completed the testing of every one of those untested sexual assault kits. When Florida was deemed the pill mill capital of the world, and we had more pill mills than we had McDonald's in the state of Florida, when 90% of the largest distributing pill mills were in Florida, the entire nation, she personally took that on, worked in a bipartisan way to shut down the pill mills in Florida, and we were glad to shed the title of the pill mill capital of the world. And it is still urban legend. In Tallahassee, Florida, the capital of Florida, it is urban legend what she was able to accomplish when we started losing record number of people to fentanyl in this nation, when fentanyl became such a deadly poison, ravaging our working and fighting age Americans, even our children. She took that on, even when some in leadership didn't go along with it. She personally visited Republican and Democratic lawmakers with a vial of grains of sand and showed them how deadly that substance was. And even when leadership wasn't anxious to go along, she fought for that and won that vote by one. I can assure you, Pam, the person, would never allow herself to make any decision or take any action as Attorney General through a lens of red or blue. She has never been persuaded by those who might hold power. She is driven by her insatiable desire to protect people and ensure justice. I can assure you she loves this country. She reveres our judicial system. She safeguards it, and she knows that it is there to protect persons and their inalienable rights. Our judicial system has hit a record low in trust by the American people. We should all be fighting every day to change course. Just as she has done for countless victims, she will claw back this nation's trust in our judicial system and the DOJ. She will not hide behind court filings or press releases. She will be frank and passionate with the American people and fight for them as she has done her entire career. Our justice system itself has been victimized by those who have used it and exploited it for political warfare. She will fight for this country she loves, its people, and the integrity of that judicial system. Our judicial system must be made whole. We must restore trust in it to maintain the strength, stability, and continuity of this great nation. And finally, in my remarks regarding our soon-to-be Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, and Pam the person, I think it's important to let everyone know when I became the Attorney General behind her, she wasn't as interested in making sure I remembered to recognize her for her achievements or for what she had done for Florida. All she cared about was my success in continuing to protect Floridians, our state's autonomy, and the safety of those in our state. And it is evidenced by what she left me on the day she left office. She left me a note card with a personal note. She said, "Ashley, you will be the greatest AG." And you know what I get to say now, Mr. Chairman? Right back at Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi will make the greatest United States Attorney General.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Klobuchar is next. I'm going to be gone about 3 minutes, so I don't lose my line and seniority down in finance, and then I'll be right back. So,
Mr. Chairman, I don't think you'll ever lose your line in seniority.
Number one.
Senator Grassley, I will not lose my line in not seniority. Lowest number. Fine.
Okay, I am just going to speak for 2 minutes in deference to my colleagues. And I had chairing another hearing and heading to another one, but I wanted to record my vote officially as opposed, as I know we voted by proxy. And I just want to simply say I appreciated our new colleague's words about her friend and colleague. I ask consent that I vote as present and here, as opposed. Okay, thank you. I enjoyed meeting Pam Bondi, appreciated the opportunity to talk to her about our shared priorities, including cracking down on fentanyl, human trafficking.
Baby girl, you are so pretty, 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 pretty. Baby girl, you are so pretty, 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 pretty. Females need you just to trick me, trick me, trick me, trick me. 'Cause baby girl, you are so pretty.
Reporting. President Trump and his nominee to head the FBI have made repeatedly clear that they want to use the department to get revenge on their political opponents, and they're actually showing it. And for the shared priorities that we've talked about, these have not been the priorities of the Trump administration. Instead, in less than 2 weeks since he was sworn in, the president simultaneously used the Department of Justice to punish prosecutors investing crimes related to assaults on U.S. Capitol Police officers, pardoned those responsible for the assault, and denigrated prosecutors who put in jail someone whose website caused the death of 6 people. In his first hours in office, the president issued an executive order directing the Attorney General to re-examine scores of investigations and prosecutions at the department over the last 4 years. This week, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia ordered an investigation of the charging decisions of the prosecutors involved in the January 6 cases. But what really concerns me, and what I do look forward to talking with Pam Bondi about if she is confirmed, and I do look forward to discussing this with her because we both shared a common background as heading up prosecutors' offices of career prosecutors, as our new colleague just noted. Here we have a case where prosecutors who throughout the department have worked apolitically for decades, to uphold the rule of law and keep our country safe. They just get randomly assigned to cases sometimes. New people come in, they get put on cases. And to fire these people simply because they have been placed on cases, career people, is just wrong. We're looking at the Assistant Attorney General for National Security and the Assistant Director of Counterterrorism, as well as the most senior career official who for years has worked to ensure that DOJ-led leaders comply with ethics requirements and with rules designed to keep politics out of the department's work. Whether a new attorney or an experienced professional, these are lawyers who have taken an oath to the Constitution and whose loyalty is to the noble mission of the Department of Justice and not the politics of a particular president. I am also very concerned about the grants and the funding and all of the activity of yesterday, which has put a hold on so much of the work to keep our communities safe. I will put the rest of my statement on the record. I thank my colleagues, and I really do hope that Ms. Bondi can show that independence that we value. I say this with hope. I am very concerned, so I am voting no, but she does have an opportunity in that independent role of the Attorney General of the United States of America to stand up to this kind of illegal activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. I will recognize myself. And to my colleagues, I am so pleased that we have moved forward with Pam Bondi this morning. And as she said in her confirmation hearing, her goal is to restore confidence in the Department of Justice. And this is a good thing. The American people are so fatigued with a two-tiered justice system. And what they want to see is equal justice for all. Something else I have appreciated is that she will crack down on violent crime and push to make our cities and our communities safe again. We've seen such an uptick in violent crime. It doesn't matter if it is Memphis or Chicago or New York. Much of this is related to gangs that have entered our country. They are in our communities, and unfortunately, we have seen every town become a border town, every state a border state. And she realizes that this border security is national security, and they're going to have to work hand in hand on this to protect our country and to end the political cabal that has existed at the DOJ that we saw under the previous administration. The other thing I think is so significant is her career as a prosecutor, and knowing that she spent 18 years as a prosecutor before the 8 years that she spent as Florida's Attorney General. So we are well aware that she is well confirmed, and we look forward to that confirmation. And who is on? Senator Hirano, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For me, and probably many other Democratic members of this committee, there were concerns going into Ms. Bondi's hearing that she would not have the independence necessary to be the Attorney General. Indeed, she, if confirmed, she will be the Attorney General to a president who expects 100% loyalty from his nominees. The question is whether she will have the strength to stand up to a president who views the office of the Attorney General this way, quote, "I have the absolute right to do what I want with the Justice Department."
And if you are just joining us on Live Now from Fox, it's a busy day in Washington, D.C. We were just listening in there as the Senate is discussing President Donald Trump's Attorney General choice. Pam Bondi, the Senate Judiciary, is voting whether to advance that full Senate vote. Thanks for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. My name is Christy Mattino. I do want to take you out to a live event that is starting right now. This is going to be our primary coverage for this morning. And here it is. Okay, so this is going to be Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's having his first hearing with the Senate Finance Committee. Will eventually vote on whether to advance his nomination to the full Senate. He will have an additional hearing tomorrow with the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, but that committee will not have a vote on the nomination. Kennedy is Trump's pick for Health and Human Services Secretary. This hearing is going to determine whether his nomination advances, particularly regarding Medicare, Medicaid, and federal health policy as some big topics here as well. I do want to turn up the sound and listen in to see if this has gotten started yet. So again, we are just waiting in here to wait for this to begin. So I do want to share some other information as we're keeping an eye on this, set to start momentarily. Again, this is the confirmation hearing for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We can see him walking in right now, that media presence as he's heading to sit down. So this is set to start here in just a short moment or so. I am going to turn up the sound one more time to see if we can hear anything.
Good morning. This hearing will come to order. I thank my colleagues and Mr. Kennedy for being here today. Mr. Kennedy
Kennedy, congratulations on your nomination. Throughout this process, Mr. Kennedy, you have been accessible to members and staff on both sides of the aisle and have demonstrated strong commitment to fulfilling the responsibilities of this role. The Department of Health and Human Services oversees our nation's largest healthcare programs, providing coverage for nearly 2 in every 5 Americans. Improving Medicare, Medicaid, and CHIP, among other initiatives, presents challenges, especially in the face of a rapidly aging population, stubbornly high costs, and persistent barriers to access. However, this also provides us an opportunity to deliver bold, transformative solutions. As a committee, we share a commitment to advancing common sense, bipartisan policies that improve the delivery of healthcare in this country. This committee has worked to realign incentives in the prescription drug supply chain, to enhance access in rural communities, to expand the availability of telehealth and improve the broken clinician payment structure. Across these and other issues, I look forward to working with the administration to continue pursuing meaningful reforms that serve the American people more effectively and more efficiently. Too often, patients encounter a healthcare system that is disjointed and is a dysfunctional maze. Complex and bureaucratic chutes and ladders have become the norm. Meanwhile, even as healthcare spending climbs, outcomes across a range of conditions continue to decline. Mr. Kennedy, if confirmed, you will have the opportunity to chart a new and better course for the federal approach to tackling both the drivers and the consequences of our ailing healthcare system. Your commitment to combating chronic conditions that drive healthcare costs will be critical to our success. Prioritizing disease prevention and addressing the factors that fuel conditions such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, Alzheimer's disease, COPD, and cancer will save lives, reduce costs, and build a healthier, stronger country. Private sector breakthroughs from groundbreaking cancer medications to curative gene therapies also offer hope. But misguided government initiatives and market volatility risk eroding American leadership in life-saving R&D. Your advocacy for healthcare transparency has the potential to empower consumers across the country, promoting competition to enhance quality while cutting excessive spending for patients and for taxpayers. Today's hearing will provide a forum to hear more about your vision, particularly for the federal programs under this committee's jurisdiction. Mr. Kennedy, you represent a voice for an inspiring coalition of Americans who are deeply committed to improving the health and well-being of our nation. Regardless of political party, everyone in this room shares a common recognition that our current system has fallen short, as well as a common desire to make our country healthier. I look forward to today's conversation as well as your testimony, Mr. Kennedy. And now I recognize Senator Wyden for his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The question before the Finance Committee this morning is whether Robert F. Kennedy should be trusted with the health and well-being of the American people. Committee staff have examined thousands of pages of statements, books, and podcast transcripts in a review of his record. The receipts show that Mr. Kennedy has embraced conspiracy theories, quacks, charlatans, especially when it comes to the safety and efficacy of vaccines. He has made it his life's work to sow doubt and discourage parents from getting their kids life-saving vaccines. It has been lucrative for him and put him on the verge of immense power. This is the profile of someone who chases money and influence wherever they lead, even if that may mean the tragic deaths of children and other vulnerable people. Now, Mr. Kennedy is fond of saying he's not making recommendations about whether parents should vaccinate their children. He's just asking questions and giving people choices. It's a slippery tactic to dodge any real responsibility for his words and actions. And it is, in my view, absurd coming from somebody who's trying to win confirmation for a job that is entirely about making recommendations. These recommendations are going to have life or death consequences for the American people. Mr. Kennedy, if you are confirmed, your recommendations determine which vaccines senior citizens get for free through Medicare. Your recommendation will determine which vaccines are given to millions of kids. Peddling these anti-vaccine conspiracy theories as our chief health officer is going to endanger the lives of kids and seniors across the nation. Just look at what happened when Mr. Kennedy inserted himself into an anti-vaccination crisis in the island nation of Samoa. He traveled there himself to push his views and pour fuel on the fire of a measles outbreak that began due to low vaccination rates. In the end, 83 Samoans died, mostly kids, from a disease that is easily preventable. Americans cannot afford to import this experiment to our great nation. On other healthcare matters, from abortion to universal healthcare, Mr. Kennedy has changed his views so often it is nearly impossible to know where he stands on so many of the basic issues that impact Americans' daily lives. In a gobsmacking statement of irresponsibility, in November 2023, Mr. Kennedy said that he wanted to pause infectious disease research for 8 years. Mr. Kennedy has indicated he's open to restricting access to the abortion medication mifepristone, which remains a primary target of the Republican crusade against reproductive freedom. I took this on back in 1990 when I chaired the first congressional hearing on the topic. The science was clear then. It's even clearer today. Mifepristone is safe. The only reason it's under question in 2025 is because people with a political agenda have been out lying about it. Women deserve to know if Mr. Kennedy will abuse his power as our country's chief health officer to essentially implement a national abortion ban by restricting access to the safe and legal medication. Meanwhile, as the Trump budget office threw the Medicaid program into chaos yesterday, Republicans in Congress are proposing deep cuts to the program that will rip away health care from millions of Americans who count on this vital lifeline. Cuts to Medicaid of this magnitude are going to jack up the cost of health insurance. It'll shutter nursing homes and rural hospitals, deprive seniors and Americans with disabilities of home-based care. That approach amounts to handing over our nation's health system to for-profit insurance companies who made a fortune delaying and denying care. Mr. Kennedy has virtually no knowledge or experience in handling these issues. It leaves him unprepared to take on a crisis like the nation witnessed yesterday when the Trump budget office shut down the federal Medicaid payment portal. After a careful review of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s statements, actions, and views, materials that I have reviewed personally and closely, I reached the conclusion that he should not be entrusted with the health and well-being of the American people. When he's taken every side of every issue, how can this committee and the American people believe he has anything to say? Let me close by saying I believe more strongly than ever, and I have specialized in healthcare during my time in public service, that we're at a turning point with regard to healthcare in America. If there's one word to describe Americans' feelings towards the healthcare system, it's disillusion. At every single turn, people feel like they're rolling a loaded dice, when they try to get health care. Americans are justifiably angry, fed up, and tired of a system that puts profits over patients. Instead of debating meaningful ways to improve Americans' health care, now the committee is being forced to relitigate settled science about vaccines and whether or not the federal government should help Americans get affordable health care. I know where Democrats on this Finance Committee stand when it comes to an agenda to lower costs and improve care. I must say, I cannot say the same about the nominee sitting in front of me. And let me acknowledge, finally, Mr. Chairman, Terry Mills from Portland, Oregon, who is here to represent Nurses for America, and I'd like to enter a statement from her organization into the record at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection. Thank you, Ranking Member Wyden. Mr. Kennedy, in a few moments you will be given the opportunity to make your opening statement and respond to these attacks and other questions that the members of this committee have. I would say that with regard to the attack on Medicaid that we just heard, that was a false attack. It's been proven false overnight. The Medicaid portal is operating efficiently today and was never intended to be shut down.
Would gentleman yield, since he's mentioned my name? There was a significant amount of time yesterday where there was bedlam across the country over the status of the Medicaid portals. I hope it's being corrected, but there were problems all through the day.
There certainly were attacks yesterday. The problem has been clarified and the Medicaid portal is fully operational as we speak. Mr. Kennedy, before I turn the time over to you to share your opening statement, I would like to give you a brief introduction. The son of Senator Robert F. Kennedy and nephew of President John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Jr. has been an advocate for consumers since 1985. After graduating from Harvard University, Mr. Kennedy studied at the London School of Economics and received his law degree from the University of Virginia Law School and a master's degree in environmental law from Pace University. He has founded 2 advocacy groups and has spent the last 40 years working to restore and protect children's health. He was a former independent candidate in the 2024